about that. Okay.
Yep, got it.
Great. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this deck, and I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of this training. The purpose of the training is to prepare you for a Department of Health inspection at an offsite event. And I'm going to ask everybody to please hold your questions toward the end, or you can include questions in the chat. If you're afraid you're going to forget your question, you could just put it in the chat, which is on the bottom right-hand corner of this window. If you need it, it's a little speech bubble. So everyone here is gathered because we are expecting a Department of Health inspection at the Golf Ball event that's going to be happening this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But this training is useful if you work in the kitchen or you are at an offsite event, any offsite event that could be inspected, or if you're ever here at our commissary and you have a health inspector come, this training should help prepare you and just make sure that you have the details that you need and you know the information you need to know. So the purpose of this training is to prepare you for a simple and successful DOH inspection, and it could be at our commissary or anywhere at an offsite event. The Department of Health inspection is just a routine affair. It's something that happens on a regular basis. It's no reason to stress out. And if you have the information you need and we're prepared and we're doing everything the way that we should be doing it, shouldn't be a big deal. So what you're going to know after the end of this training is what the requirements are from the Department of Health, what the protocols are in terms of time and temperature, and what the critical control points are for when we're sending food to offsite events. You'll know a little bit about the timeline for this event and how to prepare your team for a Department of Health inspection. And we'll do a little bit of a role play probably at the end if we have time, and have some time for questions. All right?
Yep.
All right, so health inspections are important, and they're a standard step for setting up a legal food service operation. If we're doing everything right, really there's nothing to be afraid of. So sometimes where we go wrong is just when we get nervous and we say too much, or we trip over ourselves during the inspection. The purpose of this training is just to prepare everyone so that we're not stressed out and mess it up just because we're off our A game. So the first thing, what you need to know. So the Department of Health requires quite a bit of signage for every food service establishment. And this signage, for the purposes of our event this weekend, will all be pre-placed on our setup day. So it'll be placed by me, laminated signage throughout the event. There's some signage that needs to be in the kitchen tent, and there's some signage that needs to be in the dining room, which in this case will be the cabanas. We have multiple cabanas that will be set up for guest service. So the signage includes healthy eating information, the alcohol pregnancy warning, the food allergy poster, which is this photo here on the right-hand side, a choking first aid poster, where the CPR equipment needs to be listed. And in this case, we will have a CPR kit in the DOH preparedness box, which is a special kit you'll be getting for any event where we have a DOH inspection expected. For everyone's understanding and just knowledge for future, we also have a CPR kit that's included in our green event box. There's always one there, just in case anyone ever asks, or you ever have a need for a CPR kit at an event. There is a CPR kit that is included in our green event box. No smoking signs are required for both the dining area and the kitchen tent. Our food service license, so that is our DOH license number. In our case, it's the number that covers our commissary facility. So that will be posted in the kitchen tent. There needs to be a notice that plastic straws are available. That's for an accommodation of people with disabilities that require a straw for drinking beverages. There must be, employees must wash hand signage anywhere near a bathroom or a hand wash sink. and we have to have waste sorting and recycling information. So all of that will be posted prior to you arriving at the venue. All right. There must always be a manager on site that has a New York City food handler's permit. I've included a lovely picture of my food handler's permit here. You can see that these are permits for life. So I was probably 15 years younger when this photo was taken. But anyone that has had a food handler's permit at any time in New York City should bring their food handler's permit to this event when they come. And you have to have the actual physical permit. You cannot have a photo of the permit or a printout of the permit. That's not accepted ID. It has to be the actual, plastic card identification, or some folks that are even older than I am have the, full-size paper printout. So whatever format your original food handler's license was issued in, that's the format that you need to bring with you in person to the event. All right. So just a note on food safety. One of the most important things that we can do to help keep our food environment safe is wash our hands. So washing hands prevents all kinds of disease spread, especially diseases that are spread through contamination of food. So wash your hands before starting work. Each time after you do anything that's contaminating, like coughing or sneezing or handling any unclean items. And anytime that you're eating or smoking or anything like that, definitely wash your hands afterwards. The more often that you wash your hands, the better. Wash your hands with soap and water. And everybody probably learned all this protocol during COVID, but you can sing the happy birthday song, just to make sure you're washing your hands with soap and water for long enough. And then you can dry them using a hand dryer or a clean paper towel. Offsite at events, you're also welcome to use the prepackaged sanitizing towelettes, and those will be available for you in the kitchen tent as well. All right. So this is just another thing to bear in mind when we're talking about offsite events. Sometimes space is tight. So we have to be aware of how we're storing things and how we're keeping things in the kitchen tent itself. So first of all, you never want your bare hands to come in contact with food that will not be cooked. So that means ready to eat food. That's food that's not going to be heated after you touch it. So anything that's not going to be heated after you touch it, you need to use a sanitized utensil, deli paper, or disposable gloves. So raw or bare hands are not touching ready to eat food. You want to keep all your food covered. So if you have food that's in the kitchen tent, you use plastic wrap. If it's out on a station, it has a cover on it if possible. So you're wanting to make sure that food is left covered if it's in refrigeration or if it's being prepared in the back. You also want to be aware of how you're storing things in refrigerators. So things that are ready to eat should always be above raw foods. And you're not going to be receiving any raw poultry or meat at this event, but if you were, raw poultry always goes on the bottom. So that's just something to be aware of. You never want to have raw meat above food that is going to be served ready to eat. And packaged food cannot be in contact with undrained ice or water. So you want to make sure that that is also just not in contact with water, the sitting water. So you just want to make sure those things are not like in direct contact. That means that they're basically like soaking in water that would be distributed between it. So this chart here shows just the standard way to organize a refrigerator. As you can see, chicken is on the bottom, followed by other raw meats and eggs, and then raw vegetables, and then finally ready to eat foods would be on the very top. All right, so when we talk about storage, we want to use single service dishes and utensils, and you want to have them just not coming into contact with food. So you want to keep your utensil off to the side. You want to store all food service equipment and utensils off the ground. So anything that's going to come into contact with food should not be stored on the ground. It needs to be stored at least 6 inches off the floor. If you're ill or if you have any open cuts or infections, first of all, please don't come to work. Please stay home. Please call out and just be sick and recuperate and be well again before you come back to work. But definitely don't handle food if you're sick or you have an open wound or an infection. And please do not smoke, eat, or drink while working. So if you are needing to take a drink break or a smoke break, that should happen outside of the kitchen area, and then wash your hands and come back to work. Quick note, it is a violation to have open food or containers, drinking containers in the kitchen tent. All right, so these are some common cooking temperatures. So these are the internal temperatures that we would need for cooked food. So poultry needs to be cooked until at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Pork, 150, beef, 130. All other food except eggs to at least 140, and shell eggs or food containing shell eggs to at least 145. So part of your DOH preparedness kit that you'll get in your box at this event this week is a instant read thermometer. And this diagram here shows you how to calibrate your thermometer. This could be something that the DOH inspector asks you. First of all, do you have a thermometer? And then do you know how to calibrate it? So the easiest way to calibrate your thermometer is to put it in a glass of chilled ice water. And you're going to check to make sure that the temperature reading on the thermometer is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature at which water freezes. So that's how you know that your thermometer is reading the correct temperature. And most thermometers can be adjusted with the base of the cover for the thermometer. It's actually a little wrench. So you can put it over the thermometer and adjust it to make sure that the temperature reads 32. All right, so we're getting into how to prepare to ship food and what temperatures are appropriate. So you want to, first of all, prepare your food as close to the transportation service time as possible. So the longer between when you prepare the food and when it's eaten, the more time there is for bacteria to grow. So first of all, we want to just make sure that we're preparing foods close to the time of service. The next thing to be aware of is what we call the danger zone, which is anything between the temperature of 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. And in food safety terms, we are trying to minimize the amount of time that food sits between 40 and 140, because during that time, pathogens grow exponentially. So, an exponential curve is one that starts out flat and then grows and grows and grows very quickly. Any pathogens do reproduce in that kind of way during this temperature. It's their favorite temperature, 40 to 140. And the health department requires that we don't have food out in this temperature, 40 to 140, for more than 4 hours. But for the purposes of this event, we are going to not have food be out or served for more than 3 hours. And that's just to prevent being anywhere near this 4-hour window. We need to reheat potentially hazardous hot foods to at least 165 and stir them with the utensil just to make sure that that temperature is consistent throughout. So it's up to 165 all throughout the hot food. So when we get the things out to our service area, we don't really care if they're at 40 to 140 as long as we discard them after 3 hours or less. All right. Hot and cold holding, this is requirements from the health department. Do not use steam tables or other hot holding devices to reheat foods. So we'll reheat our foods in the ovens, in proofers, but not in the chafing dish itself. We're not using the chafing dish for reheating. We maintain potentially hazardous hot foods at 140 or above, maintain potentially hazardous cold foods at 41 or below, so outside the danger zone. And we use a thermometer to evaluate the temperature and just make sure that we are at the proper levels. All right, so some more standards for food protection. Have a qualified supervisor for your establishment. So that just means we need to have at least one person that has the DOH food handler's license in place at all times. Do not sell shellfish unless you obtain a waiver. Sanitize all food contact surfaces and equipment. Chemical sanitation solution may be prepared by mixing 1 tablespoon of bleach with each gallon of cool potable water. Do not add soap or detergent to the water. And you also don't want to have a rag soaking in your water. Both of those things can sort of reduce the effectiveness of your sanitizing solution. So you want to have these sanitizing red buckets, and basically you put a cap full of bleach in the bucket, and that's your sanitizing solution. We will also have sanitizing testing strips that will be sent in your kit, which you can use to make sure that your sanitizing solution is at the proper levels. All right. Ensure that walls, base floor, and food contact surfaces are of sanitary construction and made of non-corrosive, non-rusting metals. Surfaces must be waterproof, smooth, readily cleanable, and resistant to dents and scratches. Provide proper waste receptacles and have vermin-proof covers with tight-fitting lids. So these are just requirements that we have for our kitchen location. Okay. Enclose or guard cooking and serving surfaces to provide protection against airborne contamination. So again, you want to make sure that you're not serving things that are just open air. And you also want to prevent injury from unknowing people actually just coming into contact with cooking surfaces. So you want to make sure that cooking surfaces are away from guest contact, and that everyone's aware of anything that might be hot or hazardous. Propane tanks, we will have a couple propane tanks. You want to make sure that they're in the vertical position and that they have an anchor. Usually we just put them in a milk crate just to make sure that they don't topple over. So you just want to make sure that that fuel is secure and that it's not moving around. All right, so at an off-premise establishment, like we'll be cooking from a tent, we don't have a sink requirement. However, we want to make sure that we have a way of keeping hands clean. And in this case, we actually will have a sink available to us. That sink does not have it's not connected to the New York City sewer system. So there will be a wastewater receptacle, and that needs to be clearly labeled as wastewater, not potable water. Yeah, so just making sure that we are providing drinking water to you all as far as bottled water goes, that we do have a way to wash our hands, and that we're labeling our wastewater as such. All right, so quick reminder, I just said it, but the danger zone is 40 to 140. This is the one thing that the health inspector will probably hammer home. Generally, they are going to be taking temperatures of the different foods that we have around, making sure that we're reducing the time that our food is spending in this danger zone of 40 to 140. All right, so now we're going to get into our temperature log protocol. This is where it gets a little technical, but there's basically 3 critical control points for the food at this event. One of the critical control points is transit. So that's when the food leaves the commissary and then when it arrives on site at your event. The other critical control point is the refrigeration. And then the final critical control point is the service time of when we send the food actually out to the cabanas. So we're going to take the temperature basically at all of those different control points just to make sure that we're maintaining the temperature. So the first transportation temperature control point is this transportation log. We will have one of these logs attached to every single one of the racks or proofers that we send to your event with the food items listed, the time that they departed, and the temperature. when they departed. Okay, so everything should really be sent refrigerated. It should be sent below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will be sent in a refrigerated truck. Then we'll take the temperature again when you receive the delivery on site, and hypothetically, everything should also be refrigerated when it is delivered because it was delivered in a refrigerated truck. So you will take both of those temperatures at that time. The other thing that you're going to be checking is the temperature of the refrigerators that are on site. So you want to make sure that those are always below 40 degrees as well. There'll be a log for the refrigerator so we can check them throughout the day. And finally, you want to check the temperature when you send the food out to the stations, and there will be individual temperature logs for each cabana. So again, this is the transportation log. It shows the time and temperature on departure and the time and temperature on arrival. There is a temperature log. So this is the range of temperatures that we want to see, 33 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Each machine will have its own log, and we will mark date, time, and temp a couple times throughout each day. And then here's the cabana log. There will be a little plastic slip with one of these logs in each cabana where we will list the food item and the time and temperature for each item when it is delivered to the station, so we can show that it is out on the station for less than 3 hours.
Good.
All right. So how do you set up yourself for success? How do you make sure that the DOH inspection goes smoothly? First of all, have a designated area for hand washing. By the bathrooms and in the kitchen, there will both be hand washing capabilities. Have your food handler's license with you if you have one. Make sure that you bring it in person. The actual original ID that you received when it was first issued to you, have it with you at the event. Make sure all your required signage is posted. Again, I'll make sure that all that signage is posted in the correct locations on Thursday, but if anything happens to fall off the side of the tent in the meantime, make sure you replace it. Have designated areas for warewashing if applicable. In this case, we do not need to be doing any warewashing on site. Prepare hot and cold holding protocol. So that's what we just talked about. Do not place food or anything that will touch food on the floor. So again, if you do need to put anything on the floor, make sure you put something underneath it that is 6 inches or taller. So that could be a milk crate, that could be a riser, anything that will raise that item off the floor by 6 inches or more. Prepare to have food covered at all times with lids or plastic wrap, and make sure garbage and recycling bins are covered. So this is an example of a kitchen tent diagram, and we actually have a different one this year that we can show you in a minute. But this is how we set up ourselves for success in terms of back of house, making sure that we have the appropriate heating and cooling equipment for all of you. And we've taken quite a bit into consideration for this year, and we can go more into that later. All right, place sanitizer buckets or sanitizing wipes for every station. Locate your sanitizer testing strips and your DOH box so that you know exactly where that is. Make sure to have plenty of gloves and hairnets on hand. So the gloves will be in your event box. The hairnets are in the DOH preparedness box. Make sure all food preparation staff have instant read thermometers. Again, those will all be in the DOH preparedness box. Just make sure that you distribute them to your team. Keep side towels to a minimum. So it's actually a violation to have more than one side towel or to have a side towel out on your station or loose. So you want to make sure that you are keeping side towels to a minimum, or if there are an excessive amount of side towels when the DOH inspector comes, just toss them in the garbage. You don't need to keep them. It's not worth it. So just make sure that you're keeping those to a minimum. And locate and place your temp logs in the proper area for each refrigerator and on each food service station, and plan to keep transport logs in the DOH binder so you can confirm the temperature and monitoring process that we have in place. So our DOH kit is a box. It has a red binder in it, and the red binder has your setup checklist. It has a copy of this training deck. It has an outline of this training. It has extra temperature logs and log holders. It has double-sided foam tape, scissors, laminated required signage. It has a mock inspection form, which I would recommend that you use at the beginning of each shift. So it has a little checklist of things that you can ask your team to do a little role play and get prepared. It'll have gloves, hair nets, instant read thermometers, and sanitizer testing strips. It's basically your kit for success for this inspection. All right. So at the beginning of each shift, I recommend that you include information about this inspection with your team in a meeting. So let them know that we are expecting to have the health inspector come. Go over the time and temperature protocols. There's no reason that you alone should know this information. You want to share it with your team. Going over it again will reinforce it for you, and it will make the team prepared and help them help you when the time of the inspection comes. So go through the temp logs, the timeline, let them know what the danger zone is, make sure that they have a hair covering, a hat or hairnet and gloves, and just make sure that they're keeping on top of hygiene. I mean, this is something that we should be doing in any cooking environment, but especially when we're expecting for the inspector to come, we want to make sure that we're clean and orderly. And yeah, and then do your mock inspection, which will be again included in your binder. All right, so I'm going to let you guys watch this video. This is a video that shows what I think is a very typical health inspection. So it's pretty short, but this will show you a lot of what you could expect from a health inspector.
So the first thing I do when I conduct a food inspection is wash my hands. A lot of foodborne illness outbreaks can simply be prevented by washing hands. I don't only wash my hands to ensure that I don't contaminate any food, but it's to show me that the premise has the required aspects of hand wash facilities in the premise. Each food premise is required to have a designated hand wash station only used for hand washing. Each station has to have hot and cold running water, liquid soap, and paper towel. Now we'll look at the refrigeration unit, which is a walk-in refrigeration unit. The temperature of these units are very important. There's a temperature danger zone, which is 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius, and our goal is to minimize the time that food spends in that zone. So that's why we hold cold foods cold, 4 degrees Celsius or below, and hot foods hot at 60 Celsius or greater. So before I even walk in, I take a look at the thermometer here, and it's reading roughly 3 to 4 degrees, so that's a good sign. Now that I am in the refrigeration unit, my next step is to actually take an internal temperature of the food. I know that the ambient temperature is around 2 to 3 degrees, but I have to make sure that the internal temperature of the food is also below 4 degrees Celsius. So I normally pick a hazardous food. Hazardous foods are just those foods that are capable of growing harmful bacteria and their toxins. And I'll usually probe that food in the thickest portion to identify the temperature. So when taking a temperature, I always sanitize my probe with 70% isopropyl alcohol swabs, just like that. Just let it dry that for a minute. Good. And I probe it in the thickest part of the food. And it's telling me about 3 degrees. So now I can positively say that this unit is capable of cooling foods down to 4 degrees Celsius or less. Another important aspect is actually the shelving units themselves. They're smooth, non-absorbent, and easily cleanable. They're in good condition. There's no chipping paint. They're not rusting. A lot of times when you have old shelving, the paint starts to come off, and that can present a route for physical contamination. Other aspects I'm looking for in the refrigeration unit is the storage of food. So any raw foods should be stored below any ready-to-eat foods. Ready-to-eat foods being those types of foods that don't undergo any further cooking. This could be cold-cut meats or fresh produce. The next thing we'll look at is hot holding. It's very important to hold hot foods at 60 degrees Celsius or greater to minimize the time they spend in that temperature danger zone that we spoke about earlier. Again, that zone is 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. So here we have a creamy broccoli soup that's hot holding, and I will take the temperature of that soup. So I'll sanitize my probe. Let dry for a minute. Insert it to the food. Sometimes you have to steer the food. And I'm getting roughly about 65 degrees Celsius, which is above the temperature danger zone and therefore safe. It's very important that before hot holding, to cook the food to the proper internal temperature before hot holding. So for example, if you have a leftover soup in the refrigerator, you must reheat properly to 74 degrees Celsius, then hold at 60 degrees Celsius. These units, most of these units are not designed to cook foods, but to rather hold foods. In this premise, they utilize a 3-compartment sink method. And as you can see, the first sink is washing. They have a soap in water, warm water, and this is where they wash. The second sink is where they rinse. They use clean, warm water to rinse. Then the third sink, they utilize a quaternary ammonium sanitizer, which has to be at the correct concentration. They let it soak for 45 seconds and then they air dry. Cross-contamination is the transfer of harmful microorganisms such as bacteria from one food to another food, or even from your hands or equipment to a food. As I'm observing the chef, I'm looking for frequent hand washing and the use of separate knives and cutting boards for raw and ready-to-eat foods to prevent cross-contamination.
All right. So again, that video is a really typical health inspection, and that is something that you could be ready to expect while you are at GovBall or any of your upcoming events where inspection is coming. As far as team appearance, we're looking for everyone wearing clean gloves, everyone wearing a hairnet or hat, having a clean appearance and maintaining good hygiene. That's something that we expect from all of our team members every day. Having all team members with a instant read thermometer, that's all kitchen team members, and everybody knows how to calibrate them. Making sure there's a sanitary bucket on each station, and making sure each team member has a max of 1 hand towel, and there's no hand towels on cooking surfaces or in sanitary buckets. All right, when the health inspector arrives, how do you talk to them? Well, they're just a regular person, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Please do ask for their badge or their credentials prior to admitting them for the inspection. Present your food handler's license and our DOH permit right away. So you can give that to them. And then the person that, just so you know, the person that presents the license is the person who will be working with the inspector to conduct the inspection. So if you're presenting your license, you are then the designated person that's going to be doing the inspection together with the inspector. Keep your cool, stay calm, don't overshare, just answer the questions that they ask you, and do not offer them anything. This can come into play if you're like, oh, would you like a bottle of water, or would you like anything to drink, or can I offer you some of this food? Please do not do that. It actually constitutes a bribe and is worthy of a summons. So just please do not offer them anything, even though it might be the kind thing to do. It might be a really hot day. It's not something that they are allowed to accept, and it's not something we're allowed to offer. All right, so that concludes this part of the presentation. At this point, I'd love to open it up to questions. Thank you all for holding your questions till the end.